Today, I just found her story after watching his story previously on the channel. I thought we'd react to her story as well. So, it's basically like his story, but it's basically a girl version of it. So, make sure you guys are subscribed, and let's get on into this. Here we go.
My fiancé proposed, and I cried tears of joy. But while walking home, a car swerved right at me. I screamed, and my fiancé shoved me out of the way. The car slammed into him and drove off, but he flew 60 feet and hit his head on the concrete. In the hospital, doctors told me he'd live, but he had severe brain damage and likely wouldn't even remember my name. I walked into his room and showed him my engagement ring, but he just stared through me with these lifeless eyes. My lip quivered, and then the doctor told me he'd also need to relearn to talk. We walked into the speech therapist's office, and I wasn't sure he'd ever be normal again, but then she told him the rules. I'm gonna say a word, and you have to say a word similar to it. It took him a few minutes to understand, but then she said, cat. He thought for a few minutes and said, aminol. I squeezed his hand, and the therapist said, water. He replied, dink, and when I laughed, he looked at me with this goofy smile like he didn't understand why I was laughing. But then she said, happiness. It was a big word, and I didn't expect him to get it because he was just staring ahead blankly, but then he pointed his finger at me. Happiness. Mia. My jaw dropped. That was my name. And despite everything, he associated it with happiness. I started crying. The therapist shook her head. No, that's wrong. But my boyfriend kept nodding. Happiness, Mia. I took his hand and cried tears of joy, knowing no matter what will make it. My fiancé proposed, and I cried tears of joy. But while walking home, a car swerved.
That's sad.
I just buckled my little sister in her car seat when I realized my keys were inside and panicked when I couldn't open the door. I yelled, help, and yanked the handle, but our school security guard grabbed my shoulder and pulled me away. I just caught you red-handed. You're going to jail, car thief. I grasped his shoulders and shook them hard before pointing through the window. That's my sister, and today is the hottest day of the year. If we don't get her out soon, she could pass out from the heat. He calmly tapped the glass. Ma'am, do you know this thief? But my sister was 2 years old, so she just waved at him with a smile. He nodded slowly. Looks like that's a no. I pulled out my student ID with shaking hands and showed it to him, but he started laughing. That's obviously forged. You probably made it at home. I looked at my sister, and her cheeks were turning red from the heat. My heart started pulling out of my chest, so I begged the guard, please just break the glass and get her out. But he just wagged his finger. Nice try. That's destroying evidence. Then he pulled traffic cones off his cart and coned off the car with my sister still in it. I saw her lay her palm flat against the glass, and sweat began pouring down her face due to the heat. She started crying, but I could barely hear her through the glass, and that made my blood boil. So I ran past the guard and yanked the handle myself, but he dragged me back again and lifted his radio. The suspect is attempting forced entry. I pointed at the window fogging up from her breathing and screamed, she's overheating. She needs my help. He leaned in close to the fog and squinted his eyes. Interesting. Maybe she's on some chemicals. That's when my sister got spooked by his face and slapped the glass. The security guard yelled, the accomplice is getting aggressive, and swung his radio up to point the antenna at her, but the metal tip smacked the window and shattered the whole thing. I dove through, unbuckled my sister, and pulled her out with shaking hands. Her arms locked around my neck, so I told her, I'm so glad you're okay, and held her until she stopped crying. The guard stood frozen, whispering, I destroyed the evidence. I held my sister and told him he'd better cone himself off. He looked at his cones. Then he actually picked up a cone, placed it in front of his own shoes, and radioed in his location. I'd just buckled my little sister in her car seat when I realized
the only evidence that guy has is him being an idiot. That's pretty much the only thing I've gotten from all this. This guy's an absolute weirdo. El Cop.
A woman stormed over while I was pushing my son David on the swing and told me, get away from that child. Where are his real parents? I told her David was my son and took his hand to leave, but she stepped in front of me and blocked my path. You're not going anywhere with him, you sick woman. I tried to walk around her, but she ripped David's hand out of mine, picked him up, and stepped back. He screamed and reached for me, but she pulled him against her chest and turned away. The whole park stopped and stared. She set David down on the grass behind her and crouched in front of him. It's okay, sweetie. Tell me where your real mommy is. You're safe now. David sobbed and pointed at me. That's my mommy. Mommy, please. The woman turned David's face toward her and shook her head. No, honey, look at her skin. Now look at your skin. She pointed at his arm. It's different. She's not your mommy. She took you. David cried harder and tried to push past her, but she held him in place. I went to step around her, but she stood up and shoved me with both hands. I hit the grass hard. She turned to the rest of the park and screamed, this woman kidnapped a black child. Somebody call the police. Other parents pulled out their phones, and one of them was already on the line with 911. She picked David up against her hip and started carrying him toward her SUV. He kicked and reached for me, but she placed him in her car. I ran towards him, but she smiled at me and got in. Just as she was about to press the accelerator, the cops arrived. They asked what was going on, and she stepped out of her car and said, she kidnapped a black child. Arrest her. I pulled David's adoption certificate out of my bag and handed it to the officer. He read it, looked at the woman, and told her to get my son out of her car right now. She stammered, but look at them. Their skin is... He told her she had 5 seconds before she was being arrested for attempted kidnapping of a minor. She went pale and immediately unbuckled David's seatbelt, and he sprinted to me. me. Then the officer cuffed her anyway. David looked at her with tears still on his face and said, "She's scary." Her face crumpled as she got in the squad car because the child she was protecting now saw her as a monster. A woman stormed. The owner, Jerry, stormed in during a busy Friday night shift and immediately turned off the music. He told every customer they had to leave right now without paying. Everyone was shocked, but Jerry just ushered them out. Our whole staff started asking what was going on, but the second the last customer left, Jerry instantly padlocked the front door. None of my staff are leaving. Jerry pulled out his phone and started making phone calls immediately, calling corporate, his lawyers, the police. Our line cook, who never showed emotion and no one ever heard speak, asked if this was really necessary, but Jerry ignored him and ordered every staff member to gather in the back. When we did, I noticed my sister wasn't there. She was working with me tonight, but I couldn't see her. She'd told me earlier she was feeling sick, so I presumed she'd gone home. But then Jerry walked up to us with his hand out. "Everyone who has keys to the back freezers, hand them over right now." 5 of us gave him our keys, including me and the line cook. You see, our restaurant had 5 freezers in the back, and each key unlocked a different freezer. He marched the 5 of us to the back and stood in front of the first freezer. He started testing every single key. The first one didn't fit. The second didn't either. My heart was pounding, and when I looked beside me, the line cook was just standing completely still. Jerry kept muttering under his breath while trying the keys. But then he tried the key belonging to the line cook and the freezer opened. Jerry turned to the line cook immediately. "Stand against the wall. Hands in the air. Don't move." The line cook didn't say a word and backed up against the wall, his face unreadable. Jerry told us, "Hold his arms against the wall. Don't let him move." We were all confused, but did it anyway. But then Jerry pointed at me. "Not you. You need to see this." I was shaking as I let go of the line cook. Me and Jerry walked into the freezer, and he pointed at one specific container with tears in his eyes. My hands were trembling as I lifted the lid. My legs immediately gave out. My sister was inside. Her skin was blue, and her eyes were frozen open.
Bro. That is probably one of the most creepiest things that you could ever see in a restaurant or whatever that place is. Like, oh my god.
I noticed a faint glow through her pocket, and when I reached in and pulled out her phone, one message was typed out to me but never sent. "Please help. The line cook locked me in the freezer. Please." I turned around and saw officers cuffing the line cook. I dropped to my knees and screamed at him. "Why?" But his face stayed completely still. I don't know. I just wanted to see what it would feel like. The owner, Jerry, stormed in during a busy Friday night shift and immediately turned off the music. He told every customer they had to leave right now without paying. Everyone was I tucked my toddler into her crib for nap time, but she refused to sleep and kept pointing at the birds outside the window. "I want to fly like them." I told her she wasn't a bird, but then I heard a massive crash behind me. I turned and saw my husband was hauling a giant fan into the room. "I got this 80% off on sale, babe. Look how powerful it is." He cranked it to full before I could respond, and the wind hit me so hard I stumbled backward. But then something shrieked, "Mommy!" behind me. My toddler had climbed onto the windowsill while I wasn't looking to reach for the birds, but now the wind from the fan had shoved her onto the ledge. I lunged towards her, screaming, "Turn the fan off!" But I wasn't fast enough. The fan's wind pushed my 2-year-old out of the second-story window. I watched her tip and bolted for the stairs, gripping my head in horror. My husband ran after me, screaming, "Babe, calm down. It's gonna be okay. Everything is fine." But I wasn't listening or going to calm down. I burst through the back door, hyperventilating and pale with fear. And then I saw my daughter, bouncing and giggling in a massive foam pit I'd never seen. My husband tapped my shoulder. I forgot to mention, the foam pits were on sale too. I told you everything was fine. I was still shaking when my daughter looked up at me with her arms stretched out wide. "Mommy, I flew like the birds." I tucked my toddler into her crib for nap time, but
Well, at least there's the foam pit at the bottom. At least baby's not dead. Alright. Alright, Blocks. Why are we just saying this stuff now? Why are we doing that? Alright. At least baby's okay, bro.
I asked a karate master if he could train me for prison, and he kicked me to the ground. I twitched on the floor. I got 90 days for selling fake Jordans. I'm 95 pounds. If I don't learn how to fight, I'll die in there. He pulled me up with one hand. "We have much work to do, but there's no guarantee this will work." I grabbed his hand. "I'll do anything." He answered by taking my hand and bending my fingers back one by one until every knuckle popped. Lesson 1. Any man who puts his hand on you is handing you 5 small bones. Tears streamed down my face. "Yes, master." The next morning, he walked me into his kids' class and clapped twice. "Attack her." 8 white belts swarmed me, and an 8-year-old girl swept my legs, dropping me flat on the floor. I limped over holding my ribs. "Why did you do that? They're children." He pressed a gold star onto her uniform. "If children can put you down, the yard will bury you." That night, I couldn't sleep because I knew he was right. A fight was guaranteed to happen, and when it did, I needed to survive. The next morning, I bowed my head. "I'm ready to do anything you ask." He pressed a gold star onto my chest. Good. A month of popped knuckles later, on my last free morning, he fed me a snake. As I chewed it while sitting cross-legged to meditate, he lowered something heavy onto my shoulders. My eyes shot open as I saw an anaconda thicker than my arm coiled around my neck, its tongue flicking at my jaw, but I kept my hand.
I want you guys to know my mom is like really afraid of snakes. If this happened to her, she'd be darting out of them immediately.
hands flat on my knees until it settled like a scarf. He nodded once. You have achieved inner peace. You are ready. The next day, I went to prison, traded my clothes for a jumpsuit 2 sizes too big, and before the gate even shut, the biggest inmate in the yard stepped off the weight bench. She grabbed a fistful of my collar and lifted me onto my toes, smiling like a shark, showing every tooth. Fresh meat. Her knuckles pressed under my chin, and I grinned because she'd just given me her hand. I peeled her pinky off my collar and snapped it back, then the next, and the next, cracking each finger one by one as that shark smile dissolved into screams. She dropped to her knees, so I kicked her flat onto the concrete the exact way the karate master had kicked me. Everything he'd spent a month teaching me, I just used on the biggest inmate in the yard in 10 seconds. The yard went silent. I held out my hand the way the old man had held out his, and the shark took it with the hand that still worked. I asked a karate master if he could train me for prison, and he kicked. Jake's mom pointed at the wall of 7 photographs, every one of them a different man named Peter, and announced, "Your son will be the 8th. I shook my head. No way. My uncle was named Peter too, and he went to prison for arson. People died. She waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. That has nothing to do with our Peters. 9 months later, my hands were still shaking from labor when I handed the nurse our paperwork naming my son Oliver. Jake's parents came to the hospital that afternoon, and as soon as his mom saw the birth certificate, she turned red. You'll regret that. She stormed out before I could ask what she meant. 4 weeks later, a CPS worker stood on our porch holding a report claiming Oliver was starving. She walked through our house, checked Oliver's weight chart, and found nothing, apologizing on her way out for wasting our morning. 2 weeks later, she knocked again, this time glancing at her notepad instead of me. Anonymous tip. Someone reported screaming. She looked past me at Oliver, asleep in his bassinet, and rubbed her forehead. Same phone number as last time. I still have to write this up. A month later, she came back a 3rd time, and before I could even open the door fully, she held up her hand. This report claims you're planning to sacrifice him. This is getting ridiculous, and you need to file a police report. My hands went cold, and I pulled Oliver tighter against my chest. The next day, Jake and I sat across a metal table from a detective who spread pages of phone records in front of us one at a time, tapping each page. Same number, every single call. Then, he slid a printed text message across the table. Read this. It was from Jake's mom to his dad, sent the night Oliver was born. We need to get Peter before it's too late. We took them to court for harassment and filing false reports, and I stood up before the judge could speak. I turned to face Jake's mom directly, the printed message trembling in my hand. You wrote this the night he was born. We need to get Peter before it's too late. I set it down on the table between us. His name is Oliver. It's always been Oliver. Jake's mom's face crumpled, and she started crying while his dad stared at his own hands and said nothing. The judge cleared his throat. Ma'am, why are you so obsessed with naming your grandson Peter? She sniffled. Spider-Man's real name is Peter. The judge gave us a restraining order. Jake's mom.
Okay, just because you name your the kid Peter because Spider-Man's name is Peter is not gonna turn into Spider-Man. Like, what are we doing here? Alright, hold on. Let me go check some real quick. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the next one.
I was working as a journalist in a war-torn country when a hand twice my size closed around my camera lens. The man towered over me. Women do not photograph men in this country. I held up my press badge while my fingers shook. I have a journalist visa. I'm just documenting, that's all. Across the square, 3 men with rifles stopped to watch us. He pried the camera out of my hands, held it at arm's length, dropped it, and brought his boot down. My heart dropped because I was isolated, and nobody in that market was going to help an American woman. He made a call without taking his eyes off me, and the men with rifles grinned ear to ear. 10 minutes later, an army truck pushed through the crowd, and 5 soldiers climbed out. All of them were staring straight at me. One stripped my bag and passport, while another zip-tied my wrists. Where are you taking me? For what? Taking pictures? They carried me into the car and started driving, and I knew they weren't going to answer any more questions. When we stopped, the big man leaned close for the first time since the market. He pulled me out and dragged me behind the store, but when we were alone, he whispered, "I'm on your side, but you need to pretend to be mad at each other, because if the soldiers find out I want to protect you, they'll kill us both." I gulped hard, but before I could respond, he dragged me back to the car and I screamed, "You crushed my camera, you animal!" When I got in, 5 soldiers laughed. "The American should be killed." He smiled. "I agree." The truck stopped at a ravine at dusk and they dragged me out. The big man racked his rifle. "I do this alone." The youngest one crossed his arms. "I want to watch." My eyes widened and I walked to the edge with the barrel in my back. Bang! I heard a shot and the man immediately whispered, "Drop to the floor now." I lay there lifeless, doing my best to be fake dead. The young man crossed his arms. Good. They walked to their car and drove away, and I had no idea how I was going to get back home. I was working as a journalist in a war-torn country when a hand twice my size. I woke up covered in itchy red spots and I froze. It was chickenpox. I stroked my chin because I needed a way to cover them. Otherwise, Mom wouldn't let me go to Ava's playdate. I tiptoed into her bathroom and caked her foundation over every spot I could reach. It looked a little orange on me, but I figured it had to be good enough to convince her. But when Mom knocked an hour later, her palm hit my forehead the second the door opened. "You're burning up, baby, and your color's wrong." I hugged my backpack. "Nope, I'm fine, Mom. You're being dramatic. Let's get going." She grabbed her big work work bag and carried me into the car instead. We're going to urgent care first. It's the one I work at, so I know they're nice people. I nervously kicked my feet against the chair in front of me because I had no idea what the doctor was going to say. When we got there, the intake nurse waved us in. "Morning, Fiona." She pressed 2 fingers along my belly, hit a spot under my waistband, and I flinched. The color drained from his face. "I think it might be appendicitis. We're going to run some tests, and if they come out positive, we're going to cut her open and perform surgery straight away." I completely froze, and the doctor drew a dotted line curve around my belly button where she was planning to cut me open. I jumped out of my seat. "No, no, look!" I pulled up my sleeve and wiped it against the pillow to get rid of the makeup. "It's chicken pox. I covered it with your makeup for Ava's playdate. Please don't cut me open." Mom sat on the edge of my bed and smiled. "Finally, took you long enough." I tilted my head in confusion, and she explained. "Baby, you were orange in your doorway, in my foundation. There was never any surgery. I just wanted to teach you a lesson." I gasped because I thought I'd been tricking my mom all morning, when really, she'd been the one letting me. "So, can I still go to Ava's?" Mom turned her phone around to show me a photo of Ava in bed, covered in the same spots as me. "Her mom called yesterday, sweetheart. There was never a playdate either. Don't lie to me again." She reached into the work bag and set the pink calamine medicine bottle for chickenpox on my blanket, packed before we ever left the house. I woke up covered in itchy red spots, and I froze. It was chickenpox. I stroked my chin because I had just unbuckled my daughter, Rosie, from her car seat when a woman marched up and pointed her finger at the handicap parking sign. "People like you are why actual disabled people can never find parking." I pointed to the placard hanging from my mirror. "I'm allowed to park here. My daughter has autism, and parking close gives me a few extra seconds if she bolts." The woman looked past me at Rosie, standing beside the open car door. "She looks perfectly fine to me." I grabbed Rosie's hand just as a shopping cart rattled loose from the return and rolled across the lane. Rosie's head snapped toward it, and I squeezed her hand tighter while she twisted to get free. Eyes locked on the cart. The woman stepped closer, blocking the space between us and the store. "Then park somewhere else." I pulled Rosie against my hip. "Please." The woman lowered her voice. "Don't use your kid to get out of this." Rosie yanked her hand out of mine and ran after the cart right as an SUV's reverse lights flashed. "Rosie, stop!" I screamed, but she kept running. I sprinted after her and caught the back of her shirt right before she crossed behind the bumper. The SUV jerked to a stop so close the brakes squealed. Rosie fought against my arms, still reaching for the cart, while I held her against my chest and tried to breathe. When I turned around, the woman was standing by my bumper with her hand over her mouth. I lifted Rosie against my hip and walked past her. "She looks fine," I said, until she's not. I had just unbuckled my daughter, Rosie, from her car seat when a woman—
Like, why is the baby sitting in the front seat, though? That's what I want to know. Anyway, like, I want to speak to this Karen's manager, which is their mother, to show how much of an idiot she raised.
A mom yanked her daughter out of
Not
my
the
Cinderella
Karen's mom,
photo
not
line
the-
in 105-degree heat and announced to the whole crowd that I was too sweaty and gross to be a real princess. I instantly clenched my fists because I'd been
Dang, bro,
baking in a
look how
velvet ball
shiny.
gown all morning, and I wanted to give her a piece of my mind. But when I looked at her
Looks like a
daughter, she
Barbie doll.
whispered, "I didn't even get to show you the curtsy bow that I practiced." So while her mom called for the manager, I kept my hands folded and my smile on because I couldn't be the one who made her magical day even worse. A manager in a red polo jogged over, but the mom spun on him before he could open his mouth. "Do you know what it
Is that
took
the
to get
same
here?
Karen
3 years on a
earlier?
Make-A-Wish list? 3 years?" She jabbed a finger at her daughter, who was now curled up on the curb, waiting for all this to be over. "She has leukemia. This is her last good summer, and your princess won't even stop sweating for long enough to smile at her and make this trip worth our time." My smile dropped, and my manager asked if I wanted to take the rest of the day off, but I shook my head because I knew exactly what to do. I knelt down until the girl and I were eye to eye, then reached up and pulled the blonde wig off my head to show I was bald underneath. The whole line went silent, and the mom's hand flew up over her mouth. I looked the girl in the eyes. "I sweat like this because my body never cooled down after my chemo. I had what you have. I know what it's like to sit in that hospital bed and wait for the one day when everything finally feels okay." Her mom sank down onto the curb with both hands over her mouth, shaking, and the same crowd she'd just turned against me was looking at her now. But her daughter wasn't looking at any of them. She was looking at me, smiling for the first time since she got in line. "Mommy, she's the realest princess here." I took my phone camera out to take our photo together.
Okay,
"No,
wait,
you
put the
are."
iPhone
A mom
17 in
yanked her
there.
daughter out of my Cinderella. I
That
hauled
was-
my brand new
that-
gorilla couch into
that
my living
mom
room
needs
and
to
walked
do
upstairs
something,
to grab
bro. That
cushions
mom
for
was
it.
at
But
the
when I
camera
came back
earlier.
down, my eyes widened in horror. The YouTuber Sambucha was suddenly on my
They got another Sambucha one on here. They got Sambucha collab on here too. Oh my god, like I got the famous animators video, Sambucha. Oh my god, dude. Sambucha's making it every video at this point.
gorilla couch, his arms resting above
That looks kind of looks a bit like it must have kind of not at the same time, bro. Like, I wonder if he actually has a shirt that says Sambucha on it.
his head like he owned it. I dropped the cushions in shock and went to ask what he was doing here, but he sat up before I could. "I'm your new neighbor, and by the way, you should really close your back door." He pointed at the cracked open back door, then patted my gorilla couch. "Also, this is a fire couch. I'm gonna
Bro, that's freaking close up.
gonna use it if that's cool.
I
My
can't add
doorbell
people
rang
on
before I
Discord,
could tell
I'm
him
sorry,
no,
dude.
and
I
Sambucha's face
don't really have
instantly
people on
lit up.
Discord.
They're here. He shot up and ran past me to open my own door, and I gripped my head in disbelief. An entire crew instantly started flooding into my apartment, carrying a white table, a microphone, a PC, and a monitor. An entire
Wait, is
recording
everybody
setup.
else
I
studio in
screamed,
here?
"What is going on?" But Sambucha calmly replied, "My new house isn't big enough for a recording studio, so I'm gonna use yours," while directing where to place all his equipment. My blood boiled in anger, and I tried to step in their way, but Sambucha slapped my hand away. The gorilla couch needs to be the centerpiece. He ordered his crew to move it, and when they did, they dropped it so hard I heard my floorboards crack under it. Then they shuffled out, while I stood there in disbelief because one of my favorite YouTubers had set up a recording studio in my living room without my consent. I told Sambucha to get out, but he completely ignored me and sat in his chair. "Here's $600, buddy. Consider it rent." He slapped it on the table, but I immediately shoved it back and grabbed his mic. I said, "Get out." That's when Sambucha got up. He pushed me to the ground, and my head hit the edge of the gorilla couch as he stood over me and crossed his arms. I almost fought Jonah Hill. "Don't think I won't fight you." He put on a bucket hat before I could react and sat back in the chair. He clicked
that's
record
not
and began
bucket hat.
talking into the microphone. "Hey guys, so today we're testing if we can turn our neighbor's house into a recording studio." That's when I snapped. I shot up
That
and
sounds
started
like a
ripping the
thing that
cushions off the
Sambucha
gorilla
would do.
couch, my face red in anger. Sambucha laughed into the microphone. "As you see, guys, our neighbor is pretty angry," but he couldn't even finish his sentence before I yanked him out of his chair. I picked him up over my head and violently stuffed Sambucha into the gorilla couch. Sambucha was still screaming, "No," as I slammed the cushions back on, trapping him inside. He tried to punch his way up, but I grinned and sat down exactly where he was trapped. "You know, Sam, you're exactly the type of guy to get stuffed inside a gorilla couch." He kept punching and screaming, but I just put my arms above my head, then yanked out his monitor cable and watched the DVD logo bounce until it hit the top corner. "We're gonna be here a while, Sam." I hauled my brand new gorilla couch into my living room and
Oh my god, bro. I might have to tell Sambucha about that.
the safari jeep hit a ditch and launched me into the mud. I spat out dirt and immediately turned around to get back on, but the jeep was already driving away. The tour guide leaned out his window. "Sorry, but we have to leave you. It's the rule." They sped off down the loop trail, and my heart was beating out of my chest because I had no way to get back. And behind me, I heard something heavy moving in the water. I turned around, splashing the water behind me, and saw a crocodile with its jaws wide open. I kicked it in the eye, and for a second, it thrashed backward. I was catching my breath, looking around for something I could use as a weapon to defend myself when I spotted more crocodiles emerging from the water. I scanned the swamp for anything to swing, found nothing but mud, so I cracked my knuckles and decided I wasn't about to let myself get beached by some little fish. "Oh, it's on." I jumped on the big one's back, wrapped my arms behind its jaws, and bit its skull until my teeth ached. It rolled, so I bit harder until it went limp and all the other crocodiles swam away. An hour later, the engine came back around the bend right on schedule, and I was standing in the swamp, caked in crocodile blood. It skidded to a stop a foot from my knees, and the tour guide gasped, "You're still alive?" I crossed my arms, and he said, "Either get back in the Jeep or get out of the way. You can't block the road. We're on a schedule." I yanked his door open and shoved him out into the mud, then climbed into his seat, adjusted his mirror, and leaned out the window like he had. "Sorry, but we have to leave you. It's the rule." I immediately started driving, and in the rear view, I could see the crocodiles coming back for him. The safari Jeep hit a ditch and launched me into the... I was about to give birth when I heard gunshots across the street. My husband Austin grabbed my hand. "Don't worry."
Well, imagine hearing gunshots across the street from your house, bro. Like, what would you guys do in that situation? What are you guys doing that?
"Those are just fireworks, baby." I pointed at the shelf. "Can you take my police badge and go check it out?" He pressed a washcloth to my forehead. "You're about to have our baby. I'm not leaving this room to go see some fireworks." I threw the blanket off. "Fine, I'll do it myself." A contraction came that was so painful, it made me fold in half. I wrote it out and grabbed my badge. Austin spread his arms across the doorway. "Please, get back in bed." I shoved past him. "Duty comes first." I ran out the front door with one hand under my belly. Across the street, our 70-year-old neighbor was pinned against her front door, and a man in a ski mask had a pistol under her chin while he tore the rings off her fingers, robbing her blind. I raised my badge from the middle of her lawn. Hands in the air. I'm a cop. The pistol swung onto me, and now it was my hands in the air. The next contraction buckled my knees against her fence, and when I looked around for help, I saw Austin sitting on the grass crying, with his head helplessly buried in his hands. So I did the only thing I could think of, and lowered myself onto the grass, leaned back on my elbows, and started pushing the baby out. The man's hands shook in disgust, but I grinned because everything was going according to plan. He backed away from my porch, one slow step at a time. "Yo, what is that? What is that?" The gun dropped from his hand and bounced in the grass, and I snatched it up and leveled it at his chest while the baby crowned. He cleared the fence without touching it and disappeared up the block, a grown man with a loaded gun, and he got disarmed by childbirth. Austin finally made it across the street and dropped beside me, crying harder than the newborn. "It's a girl." I was about to give birth when I heard gunshots across the street. My husband Austin grabbed My older sister held a bread knife out towards me and said, "Make me a sandwich." I shook my head and told her I didn't know how to use a knife, and suddenly her eyes went wild as she raised it over her head. "You're making me that sandwich." She ran towards me with the knife, and my jaw dropped as I turned and bolted towards my room. I locked my door while she was still screaming about mayonnaise, and I breathed a sigh of relief as I thought that was it. But then she punched the tip of the knife through the door and stuck her hand through. "Open up, I just want to talk about the sandwich." She started carving the hole in the door wider while I pressed my knees into my chest, crying because I was about to die over a sandwich. Her whole arm came through and she swung the knife trying to hit me, and that's when I said the words, "With all the effort you're putting into killing me, you could have just made your own sandwich by now." Suddenly, her arm stopped mid-swing. The knife pulled out and her one eye appeared at the hole. "Wait, you're right." I listened to her go downstairs. I stood up shaking and crept to the top of the staircase where I saw her at the counter, humming and calmly spreading butter onto a slice of bread with the same knife she'd used on my door. When Dad came home, I told him a raccoon destroyed my door. My older sister held a bread knife out towards me and said, "Make me." I was passing a water bottle to my son during our desert safari tour when an elephant extended its trunk towards him. He reached his hands up, and suddenly the elephant wrapped its trunk around Caleb's waist. I screamed his name and grabbed for him, but my hand closed on hot air. He was already running away with my son, and I screamed, "We need to get him." Our guide Sifo was already on his feet. "Ma'am, please keep your feet on the floor. Driver, go." The truck lurched and threw me back into my seat. The whole herd was running with Caleb, and we passed a family of giraffes, and I thought they were going to attack us for disrupting their peace, but they just playfully tossed leaves from the tree onto us. When we got closer, I heard Caleb shrieking, but when I saw his face, he wasn't crying, he was laughing. The elephants were laughing too. The herd slowed down and got to a bend where a thin river still ran. The big elephant lowered Caleb onto its back, dipped its trunk into the water, and sprayed it over him, water going everywhere. He squealed and threw his arms up for more. It did it again. The elephant carried him back to the truck and set him down in my lap, soaking wet, grinning so wide I could see his teeth. Sipo lowered his binoculars. "He saw your son was overheating," he said softly. "He only wanted to give him a drink." Caleb pressed his wet face into my neck and pointed back at the herd. "Best safari ever." I was passing a water bottle to my son during our desert safari tour when an elephant.
Alright.
My brother-in-law asked my husband, "Is the baby feeling better, Roger?" "We don't have a baby," I told him, and the words nearly killed me because I'm infertile. I looked at my husband for help, but he looked terrified. I didn't get why until his brother said, "But Roger called me last week about taking her to the emergency room." Roger instantly shot out of his chair. "I don't know what you're talking about. Babe, let's go." His brother looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "You send me videos of her all the time." I sat there confused until he pulled out his phone and showed me a baby girl with Roger's green eyes. She was taking wobbly steps across a living room I didn't recognize. Then I heard a woman's voice saying, "Mama's so proud of you," and I almost threw up because I recognized that voice. "That's your coworker Rebecca," I said, feeling dizzy. Roger shook his head frantically. "Babe, this isn't what it looks like." I didn't believe anything he said anymore, so I looked at his brother and asked, "How old is she?" 14 months, his brother said quietly. I felt like the rug had been pulled under me. I grabbed his phone and opened his bank account because I needed to know what else he'd been hiding from me. I felt vomit rise up my throat seeing months of daycare charges, formula, diapers, and baby clothes. Then Rebecca texted, "Don't forget the clinic needs the $15,000 by Friday for the next round." I felt tears in my eyes as I realized he'd paid a fertility clinic so Rebecca could have his baby, and he was going to do it again. "Roger, 14 months ago we sat in a fertility clinic and you told me $15,000 for treatments was too much." He started crying. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Tears were running down my face at this point. His brother put his head in his hands. "Roger, what did you do?" Roger reached for my hand. "Please, I can fix this." I moved my hand far from his. "You're right, you are going to fix this," I said. I went to his transfer screen and Roger's eyes went wide. "Babe, what are you doing?" I sent $15,000 to my account before he could stop me. Then I called Rebecca on speaker. "Roger, did you send the $15,000? She asked. Roger whispered, "Please don't," but I continued anyway. "Rebecca, this is Roger's wife. Your $15,000 is paying for my fertility treatments now. You can have Roger, but just know he's too broke to pay for your next baby. Good luck." I hung up and dropped the phone in his lap. Roger reached for my hand, crying, "Please, we can figure this out." I pulled off my wedding ring and set it on the table. "I already did, Roger. I'm having my baby without you." My brother-in-law asked my husband, "Is the baby feeling better, Roger?" "We don't have a baby. I want to have pet animals as friends, like Michael Jackson," my son said, pressing his face to the chimp enclosure glass. His teacher had just told me he gets bullied and has no friends, so I turned to buy him a snack to cheer him up, but when I looked back, he was gone. Then a woman screamed, "Oh my God, there's a kid in the chimp enclosure!" My stomach dropped, and I looked over the railing to see my 6-year-old standing inside, walking straight toward the chimps. "You're going to get hurt! Come back here!" I screamed over the railing, but he kept walking toward a baby chimp sitting alone in the corner, and the big grown chimps crowded around him. "You're all by yourself like me. We can be friends," he yelled, reaching out his hand hand towards the baby, but a huge adult chimp dropped down and bared its teeth at him. I went to jump in, but a keeper grabbed my arm. "It's better if you don't go. These chimps can rip a person apart in seconds." So I screamed, "Then you go save my son." But he shook his head. "We can't. None of us are trained to go in. The handler will be here in 6 minutes." So I watched, frozen, as my son knelt and the baby crept into his lap. But the moment they touched, the grown chimps exploded, screeching and pounding the ground. Then the biggest one charged across the enclosure and reared up over my tiny son as I cried, and the keeper whispered, "He's not going to make it." But the baby chimp scrambled up my son's chest and wrapped its arms around his neck, and the biggest chimp stopped dead. It stared at them, then slowly lowered itself and backed away. Just then, the handler rushed in through the gate and carried my son out, safe, but the baby was clinging to his shirt. The head handler walked over to me, stunned. That baby was orphaned when his mom died, and the other chimps bullied him. He's been alone in that corner for months. She looked at my son holding him. He's never let a single person touch him, until now. And if you allow it, your son can take him home. Watching my lonely boy and that lonely chimp hold on to each other, I realized they'd both finally found a friend. My son yelled, "I'm going to name him Bubbles. I want to have pet animals as friends, like Michael Jackson," my son said, pressing his face to the chimp enclosure glass. I was about to leave for the biggest interview of my life when my son flushed my car keys down the toilet. Noah grinned up at me with his hand still on the handle. I dropped to my knees and desperately shoved my sleeve into the bowl because we had an eviction notice on the door, and this job was the only thing keeping us off the street. I had 5 minutes to leave the house, or the traffic on the bridge would make me late and I'd lose everything. I plunged my whole arm in past the elbow, gagging until my fingers hit metal, and I came up with the keys dripping in my fist. I almost cried from relief, but Noah's hand shot out and grabbed them before I could stand, and he hurled them straight through the open window into the bushes below and laughed like this was a game.
Adoption center. Now. Adoption center.
I screamed, "Do you want us to live on the street? Is that what you want?" His face crumpled and he started to cry, but I was already pounding down the stairs to the bush, raking through the branches with both hands. But by the time I found them, I was already 5 minutes late, and the bridge hit rush hour, so the car wouldn't get me there on time. I grabbed the bike from the garage, strapped a still crying Noah into the seat on the back, and started pedaling as hard as my legs would go, because cutting through the bridge's stopped traffic was the only shot I had left. I pedaled past people standing outside their cars, all facing the same way. I went faster, but at the bridge, a line of caution tape stopped me cold. Half of it had collapsed into the river, cars nose down in the water. My hand went to my chest because we crossed that bridge every morning, and we almost went down with it. Then my phone buzzed. The interviewer pushed the interview to tomorrow. Noah looked at me, confused, the keys still in his fist. "Mommy, are you still mad at me?" I pulled him close. I'd screamed at him for flushing those keys, but they're the only reason he's still in my arms. I was about to leave for the biggest interview of my life when I sat down for breakfast with the daughter of a billionaire, and she instantly smiled at me. "Want to see me make $2,000 by the time we leave?" I put down my menu and replied, "Sure," expecting her to show me some billionaire nonsense. But she just called the waiter over and politely pointed at the menu. "I'll take a 16-egg omelet, a side of baked beans, a glass of prune juice, and 2 black coffees." Our food came out, and I watched her eat without a word. "How is this going to make you $2,000? I asked between bites of my pancakes, but she just smiled and kept eating. The bill came out to $243, and she swiped her black business card without looking. The transaction went through, and I leaned close to her. "You said you'd make $2 grand, but you're down $243. Guess the billionaire failed." But she laughed. "Not yet." She went to the bathroom and came back 20 minutes later, clutching her stomach. "All empty now, but that bathroom is cooked." I sat there confused until I saw an employee come out of the same bathroom. "Someone just destroyed that bathroom. We need to call the plumbing company," he told his boss. Within 5 minutes, 2 plumbers came in, and I heard them say, "Whatever happened here is terrible. This will cost $2,500 to repair." They went into the bathroom, and that's when she smirked at me from across the table. "You know my billionaire dad owned that plumbing company, but last year he transferred it to me. So that $2,500 this restaurant is paying to fix the bathroom is going straight into my pocket." She put a $100 tip on the table. "Told you I'd make $2,000 by the time we leave." I sat down for breakfast with the daughter of a billionaire, and she instantly... I walked into my wedding venue and started crying sad tears because it was filled with lilies. But my mother angrily told me, "I did this for you. The sunflowers you wanted were trashy." Just as I was about to respond, I specifically didn't want lilies. My husband walked in and called them beautiful. My mother snarled, "See? Again, I'm right. You're wrong. This is why I ignore your decisions." Right before the wedding, I walked up to her and the florist to talk, but my mom pulled out a pre-made card from her pocket and gave it to me. "Stop crying. You won't even remember the flowers at your wedding. No one will." But you see, my husband remembered. He genuinely believed lilies were my favorite and brought me fresh ones every day on our honeymoon. At first, I was annoyed, but my husband only wanted to make me happy, and in bringing me the lilies filled the hole my mother left in my heart with his love. The lilies went from a symbol of being ignored to a symbol of being loved and paid attention to. I walked into my wedding venue and started crying sad. Me and my husband came home from our honeymoon and saw our entire living room looked different. There was a new couch, new curtains, new table, and when I went upstairs, a man I'd never seen was installing a new shower. I ran down confused and saw my mother-in-law. She said, "Surprise, I redecorated everything. Your old stuff was just so dated." I looked around and everything was in bright floral designs she loved and knew I hated. She had actually redesigned my entire home. I awkwardly thanked her and asked how much this cost, but she replied, "Oh, I didn't pay for it." I instantly checked our joint account and saw $12,000 were missing. My mother-in-law said, "You wouldn't have used that money for anything good anyway." I was furious and wanted to explode, but I just smiled and said thank you. When she left, I saw our old furniture in the garage, and me and my husband came up with an idea. We bought my mother-in-law tickets for a solo weekend getaway as a thank you, and when she left, we drove to a junkyard and loaded our car with the ugliest, most broken furniture we could find. We put all the broken chairs, destroyed tables, and cracked mirrors everywhere inside her home. Her entire house was cluttered top to bottom because we didn't move any of the original furniture. Then, we waited for her to get back. When she walked in, she saw the mess and her jaw dropped. I came around the corner and said, "Surprise, I redecorated everything." She didn't have any words left and walked over to her old couch surrounded by old broken drawers. But when she sat on it, the couch fell from under her. You see, we'd also sabotaged her existing good furniture, unscrewing bolts so the couch collapsed, taking out springs from the bed, and more. She stood up red in the face and screamed, "I'm taking back every piece of furniture I bought you." But I just shrugged. "Yeah, about that. We sold it all. That money was ours anyway." Her jaw dropped, and I walked out of the house, leaving her in what looked like a garbage dump with no good furniture left. Me and my husband came home from our honeymoon and saw our entire living room look. My boyfriend's phone lit up on the nightstand with a Tinder notification, and when I opened the app, I saw his bio said he was single and looking for something real. Before I could keep snooping, I heard his footsteps outside our bedroom, so I put his phone down and acted normal when he walked in. He told me he was heading to work, so I kissed him goodbye and said I love you, but I was already planning how to get him back. When the front door closed, I downloaded Tinder and made a fake profile using my friend Carly's photos. I swiped until his face came up, and the second we matched, he texted me, "Do you believe in love at first swipe?" I gagged, but typed back a winky face, and we texted for hours. And so he came home with a grin on his face, then sent Carly a message about how the two of them had this incredible connection he hadn't felt in years, all while I was sitting next to him on the couch. I kept my cool and didn't say anything, but after 4 days, I texted him as Carly, asking when we were going to meet. "How about coffee this afternoon?" he asked, and so I suggested a place across town, and drove there when it was time for our date. I parked across the street, and he showed up 10 minutes early, but I let him sit there for 20 before texting him, "I just saw you through the window, and you're way uglier than I expected. I have standards, so I'm leaving." His phone lit up, and I watched his face collapse as he read the message, and then he went to his car and cried for 15 minutes before driving home. I beat him home, and he walked in with red eyes and dragged himself to the bedroom. I smiled, then followed him in and sat on the bed. "We need to break up. I'm not attracted to you anymore." Tears formed in his eyes. "You can't just say that out of nowhere," he cried. "I'm sorry, but I'm not attracted to you, and that's not going to change." He sobbed harder, and I said, "You should probably start looking for a new place." My boyfriend's phone lit up on the nightstand with a Tinder notification, and when me and my son were in the airplane bathroom when I tried to open the door, but my hand wouldn't move. Liam was kicking his heel against the wall the way he did on every flight when we were in the bathroom together. I tried again, but my entire body was paralyzed. Something was wrong with me, and I couldn't tell him. I tried again, and my hand still wouldn't move. Someone started knocking on the door, soft at first, then harder, then a fist that didn't stop. I tried my best to at least move my mouth to scream for help, but my body refused to move. "Mommy," Liam said, but my head wouldn't turn to look at him. I tried to say his name, and my mouth wouldn't work. My body started shaking, and I couldn't make it stop. The edges of my vision went black, and the little mirror above the sink started to disappear. "Mommy, mommy, mommy, what's wrong?" Liam's voice climbed each time. A woman started shouting through the door. "What is wrong with you in there? Some of us need to use the bathroom." The lock turned from outside, and the door slid open. Her eyes hit my face, and the shouting stopped. "Oh my god, oh my god, can you hear me?" She told the flight attendant without taking her eyes off me. "Active stroke, female, 40s, get this plane on the ground so we can save her life." She got me out of the stall and laid me on my side on the galley floor. She kept her hand on my shoulder until we landed. I'd had a stroke at 35,000 feet, and she was a doctor flying home from a conference. She rode in the ambulance holding Liam's hand the whole way. I survived with some weakness on my left side. The doctors said another 20 minutes in the air, and I wouldn't have survived. Every time we take a flight, Liam asks, "Is the angry lady who saved you flying with us today?" Me and my son were in the airplane bathroom when I tried to open the door. I caught my husband sneaking out of bed in the middle of the night and coming home at 5 a.m. with woman's jewelry in his pocket. I pointed at it. "Whose jewelry is this? This isn't mine." He looked nervous, like I caught him doing something bad. "None of your business. Go back to bed." He dismissed me entirely and walked away, smiling ear to ear. I knew he was hiding something, and I was sure the jewelry was from another woman, and he was cheating on me. So I went back to bed and came up with the perfect plan to find out the truth. The next day, I bought him a fancy new smartwatch and surprised him with it. I told him it's because I love him. He was thrilled and put it on, but what he didn't know was that while setting it up, I secretly turned on location tracking, synced his health data to my phone, and made myself his emergency contact, so I'd be able to see where exactly he went. night. And that same night, he tiptoed out of bed again, thinking I was asleep. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A notification from the watch. His heart rate was climbing, and the watch pinned his location at a house in a fancy neighborhood. My stomach turned because he was at another woman's house. I grabbed my keys to drive over there and catch him in the act. But on the way there, an emergency alert flashed on my screen. His heart rate had spiked to dangerous levels, and the watch had auto-dialed 911. My eyes widened. What was he doing? I slammed on the gas and sped to that house. I pulled up and jumped out, ready to kick him in his balls. But as I stormed to the house, the front door burst open, and men in black ski masks came pouring out, carrying bags. I gasped. They spotted me and aimed their guns right at me. I threw my hands up, screaming. Sure, I was about to die, wondering if they already had killed my husband. But then I noticed it. On one of their wrists was the exact smartwatch I'd given my husband. I stuttered, "Wait, is that you?" The robber froze, then slowly pulled off his mask. My jaw dropped. It was my husband. He wasn't cheating, he was robbing houses. And the watch had called 911 the second his heart spiked mid-robbery. Sirens screamed down the street, and the cops swarmed in. As they threw their hands up, the duffel bags hit the ground, and women's jewelry spilled out across the grass. I caught my husband sneaking out of bed in the middle.
Oh my god. I don't know what's worse, cheating on somebody or robbing houses. Okay, one's kind of obvious, one's more of a crime, but, you know, both are still bad. I'm gonna say the crime is probably way worse. Your dad's cheating? Wait, what? If he is doing that, then he sucks. Bro.
My dad put $20 on my table every time I studied for an exam and told me to use it for a Snickers and a Red Bull. He swore that back in college, he only passed exams if he had Snickers and a Red Bull beforehand and failed if he didn't. I laughed and just pocketed the money. But when I got into medical school and failed my first 3 exams, he put $20 on my table, and I thought, screw it. 30 minutes before my next exam, I FaceTimed him with a Red Bull and Snickers. He genuinely pumped his fists. And 4 days later, when my professor handed my paper back and my jaw dropped, 93, I immediately called him and shouted, "It worked." But when he picked me up that afternoon.
Wait. So you're telling me if I get a Red Bull and a Snickers bar, I'll pass all of my exams? I can't 1v1 right now, bro. I can't 1v1 right now.
Afternoon to go celebrate, I suddenly got extremely dizzy. Dad, I don't feel so good. But when I looked over, he was also swaying behind the wheel. My vision blurred and I blacked out. I woke up in a hospital bed with my dad also in a bed next to me. I was about to ask why we were here when a doctor wrapped a sleeve around both our arms. "You two have genetically low blood pressure. I recommend constantly having sugar or else your brain won't be able to stay alert." I looked at her and suddenly it clicked. Dad, I know why we passed the exams. All the caffeine and sugar from the Snickers and Red Bull raised our blood pressure to normal levels so we could concentrate better. It was never the Snickers and Red Bull. Dad looked at me for a long time. Nah, it's still the Snickers and Red Bull. My dad put $20 on my table every time I studied for an exam and told me to use every night at 8:30. My 6-year-old marched into my bathroom, handed me my
Be nice. Please.
Brush and said, 2 minutes. Maisie brushed beside me at the sink with the focus of a tiny, deadly serious dentist, never taking her eyes off the clock. She'd started the week after we buried her dad, 4 months back. Bedtime had always been his job because I worked late, so when she suddenly needed me at the sink, I figured it was grief. I just needed to know why, so I could help her. So while we brushed, I started asking gently, "Are you sad about Daddy? Is something scaring you?" She frowned at me like I'd said something bizarre. "I just don't want you to get cavities," she said through a mouthful of toothpaste. Her teacher called me that week, half laughing. Maisie gave an 11-minute presentation on flossing today. Nobody asked her to. I took her to the doctor, sure something was wrong, but he just checked her over and shook his head. She's perfectly healthy. Whatever started this, it isn't her teeth. She started checking that my toothbrush was wet every night, so she'd know I hadn't faked it. One night, I was too tired and tried to skip it, and Maisie broke down sobbing and grabbed my hand. "Mom, please, we have to brush together." A few nights later, we were on the couch when a toothpaste commercial came on. Brushing alone is not enough to prevent cavities. Maisie sat straight up and pointed at the TV. "That's what Daddy always said when we brushed together. Brushing alone is not enough." I dug my nails into my palm to keep from crying. I never knew her dad had brushed his teeth with her every single night while I was at work. She wasn't doing any of this for cavities. With him gone, she was making sure that neither of us ever brushed alone. I decided not to tell her the commercial only meant she needed to floss. Now I'm the one who hands her the toothbrush at 8:30 and says 2 minutes. Every night at 8:30, my 6-year-old marched into my bathroom, handed me my toothbrush, and said, 2 minutes. Maisie brushed beside me at the sink with the focus of a tiny, deadly serious dentist, never taking her eyes off the clock. She'd started the week after we buried her dad, 4 months back. Bedtime had always been his job because I worked late. My 7-year-old son was playing with his Bob It toy from the yard sale. Twist it! He twisted it, and I laughed, until it said, take a $100 bill out of your mom's purse. Steal it. I rubbed my eyes in shock. Why was a toy telling my son to steal? My son came running into the kitchen and reached his hand into my purse. Dean, what the hell was that? Dean took out the $100 bill and shrugged. It's just a game, Mommy. I grabbed the toy out of his hand and bopped it in the middle. It spoke again. Now bring the money to 45th Street. Come alone. Do not tell your mom. Bring it. Dean tugged my sleeve. Mom, pretend you didn't hear that. I don't want to lose the game. I grabbed my keys because we were going to find out exactly who was behind this. Then let's go win, baby. I'll drive you. We got in the car, and when I pulled onto 45th Street, there was a line of kids clutching Bop It and fistfuls of bills. My eyes widened because I realized they'd all been scammed just like my son. We got out to follow the line, and my grip tightened on Dean's shoulder because it led straight to the same yard sale we'd bought the Bop It from. I pulled my son behind a truck and dialed 911 while the man patted a kid on the head as he took his money. Good job, buddy. You won the game. Come back at the same time next week. When 2 squad cars rolled up, the man raised both hands with a big, friendly smile. Officers, it's a yard sale. Kids love toys. Then a cop lifted the garage door behind him, and there it was, a whole wall of Bop Its that had been taken apart, sitting beside stacks of cash. He'd been rigging the toys with speakers before he sold them, so every kid who bought one got tricked into giving him money. They cuffed him against his own folding table. Dean tugged my sleeve, and the $100 bill was still crumpled in his fist. Mom, did I lose the game? I kissed his head. No, baby, you ended it. My 7-year-old son was playing with his Bop It toy from the yard sale. Twist it! A fat kid fell through the sky and landed on my spine. I was crossing the road when a woman driving 80 miles over the speed limit came to a sudden stop, just inches away from my body. Her son instantly ejected from the seat. When he landed on me, I heard my spine crack and I couldn't feel the lower half of my body. His mom ran out of the car and scooped him up. He cried, "My leg hurt when I fell on her, Mommy. Tell her not to do it again." I was in so much pain that tears started streaming down my face. "Please, can someone call an ambulance?" His mom crossed her arms. "You hurt his leg, he hurt your back. We're even, and we're not paying for any medical bills. We're driving to the ER." They started walking to their car, and I knew they were going to leave me. I tried to force my feet to move so I could stand, but more pain shot up my body. I screamed, "Siri, call 911," and my Siri responded, "The ambulance is on their way. Please stay put." The woman had just turned her engine back on when we heard sirens in the distance. She pressed down on her accelerator, but she'd driven in the wrong direction and braked to a stop in front of the ambulance. Her son shot over the front seat and starfished into the windshield, making the same cracking sound that my spine made. He slid down the glass, pointing at her. "You did it again! Tell yourself not to do it again, Mommy!" She'd launched her own kid twice in 10 minutes, and this time, an ambulance crew watched her do it. A paramedic was strapping a brace on my neck when she spun on me. "This is your fault!" I gave her a thumbs up from under the neck brace. "Don't worry, we're even now." A fat kid fell through the sky and landed on my spine. I walked into my house and instantly rolled my eyes because there was a hole in my roof I'd never seen, and I had no idea how it got there. It was so small, I wasn't even going to fix it. But that night, while I was sleeping, I woke up to water pouring on my face because it was raining. I called a contractor in the morning and stood outside tapping my foot, but when he stepped out of his truck, my jaw dropped because he was at least 400 pounds. He barely glanced up at the hole in my roof before waving his hand. "That little thing? I'll have it patched in 10 minutes. This is easy." He leaned his ladder against the house and started climbing like he'd done it 1,000 times. But something about the way the ladder creaked under his weight made my stomach turn, so I climbed up behind him to keep an eye on things. He walked right up to the hole and took out his tools, but the roof was already bending. "Are you sure this roof can hold you? You know, because of how heavy your tools are and everything?" I tried finding a way to phrase it nicely, but he put his bucket of cement down and got in my face. "What are you trying to say? I've been doing this for 20 years. This roof is solid." He stomped his foot down to prove it, and that's when it happened. My roof cracked open right under him. I watched in horror as this 400-pound man crashed on my living room floor stomach first. He laid there flat and not moving, while I stood on the edge of the brand new crater in my roof. I wasn't even going to fix it. Now the hole was 10 times as big. I walked into my house and instantly rolled my eyes. I was walking out of the store when an old man on a red mobility scooter rolled up next to me and asked if he could carry my groceries. I told him no thanks and started walking home. I shifted my grocery bag to my other hand, slipped my wallet into my back pocket, and clenched my keys between my fingers like my mom taught me. When I glanced back half a block later, later, he was still rolling behind me with that little basket up front. I walked faster. The scooter matched my pace. I had no idea what this old man wanted from me, but it couldn't be good. I kept glancing back the whole walk home, and every time he was still there with the scooter humming behind me. I took my usual left turn, and he took the same left. A block later, I turned onto Walnut, and so did he, and my chest tightened. Who was this guy? Michael Myers? I was full-on speed walking now, looking back every few seconds, but I couldn't lose the hum of the scooter. Every true crime podcast I'd ever listened to started playing in my head. I dropped the grocery bag and sprinted. I cut through somebody's yard and looped around the block with my heart pounding. When I finally turned onto my street, he was already there at the far end with my front door halfway between us. I ran. I burst inside, slammed the door, locked it, and pressed my back against it. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't steady them. Outside, the hum got louder until it stopped right in front of my apartment. 3 slow knocks. I crawled to the peephole and looked through it. The old man was holding something up in one hand. It took me a full 5 seconds to realize it was my wallet. I checked my back pocket. Empty. I slowly opened the door. "You dropped this in the parking lot," he said. I tried to catch up, but these scooters don't go very fast. I took the wallet with both hands, too stunned to say anything except thank you. He nodded and started turning the scooter around, then paused. "You should be careful walking alone at night," he said. "Lots of weirdos out here." I was walking out of the store when an old man